Hello out there, Internet. I'm Elizabeth Estervig, and this is your Wardrobe Unlocked. Today we're going to be tackling speed welts. The welt is the lip part that you can see on these little guys right here, and they are a fast and subtle opening for buttonholes and pockets. You've probably seen these on your trousers. What you're going to need are two pieces of your fashion fabric, so the same fabric as whatever you're putting the welt into, that are roughly 7 inches by 5 inches, so roughly a little bit wider than the width of your hand. The depth of it you can vary within there. Mostly that's enough to be able to do the speed welt as well as have enough seam allowance on either side. Another piece that you will need is the other part of the pocket, which if you have enough fashion fabric you can do it out of that and do one long piece, but if your fashion fabric is bulkier you'll probably want to do something else. So this can be pocketing, silesia, or even lining if you want to get really thin with it, then you don't mind necessarily the durability. I like to do it in one long piece. You can do it in two if you'd like to have a seam at the bottom. The advantages of doing it in one long piece is that it is a little bit faster and you have less possibility of the seam at the bottom opening up to props and things falling out. But if you're going back in to fix the pocket, you might want to have that extra piece or that extra seam there to be able to fix it. That being said, if you want that extra seam, you can always add it in later if your pocket wears out. Okay, next step, you want to sew all of your pieces into one long line. Okay, so for our first step, we're going to be sewing our fashion fabric to our pocket lining. And we want to use a fairly small stitch so that we have a very sturdy pocket. Sew and backstitch right at the beginning, and again at the end. You're going to want to do that to both sides so that when you open it up you have one flat side. Next step, we're going to press these guys, and you can either press them open or down depending on the thicknesses of your fabrics. It doesn't really matter so long as it's flat and neat. Okay. Next, what we're going to want to do is mark on the inside of our garment the size of our welt. Now, I like to go a little bit bigger than what I can comfortably stick my hand into, so for me that's about 5 1/4. There we go. Now you can do very, very small welts, and you can do bigger welts. For this, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch wide, which will give us 1/4 inch welts when we're done. Just because they're fairly easy to see that way. Now back over at the sewing table, what we want to do is we want to take the right side of our garment and the right side of our lovely pocket lining strip here, and we're going to line up with some extra space around the box. Now, if you can't see through from this side to the other side to see what where your box is, you can thread trace that so that you can see it through. You can also, if you're feeling lazy or want to go particularly fast, you can put pins through at these two sides to make sure that on the front you aren't too short on your two sides here. Now this is fairly see-through, so I can just, in general, kind of line it up. You want to make sure that you have enough space on the top edge here. I like to leave enough that I can get the welt of it, so a 1/2 inch, and then a little bit extra so that I can make my way up and attach this part of the pocket to the waistband. That means that I can put heavier stuff in this pocket without all of the weight being on the welt itself. Next, before you sew it, you can pin these two together. If it's particularly easy fabric, especially in this case for just a sample, you can just hold them together and hope for the best. If you're working on something that's particularly woodgy or doesn't particularly want to sit still, or if this is already on a dart or on a curved surface, you might want to tailor's tack or just do a quick whip stitch on either side of these just to baste it in place, to hold it in place while you sew. Now, to sew this is going to be a permanent stitch, so you want to use a fairly small stitch length. And I like to start somewhere not on the corners. That means that when I get to the corners, I will absolutely not have any gaps here, as well as less bulk to see where the actual corner actually is. Now, I'm going to backstitch just a little bit and go all the way around. Now, when you get to a corner, I like to hand wheel so that the point is absolutely in that corner. And then I'm going to pick up my foot and turn it. The shorter your welts here, the more you might want to just hand wheel the whole thing, just to avoid overshooting your corners. You want to make sure that you actually stop at your corners and you don't go too far or too short, because otherwise your welts will end up kind of lopsided and funny looking. Down the corner, back up to this corner, and we want to meet back up where we started. Ta-da! Okay, so next we're going to do is mark the depth of our welt. And since this is a 1/2 inch welt, the halfway mark for me would be 1/4 inch. Now, it doesn't have to be 1/4 inch, it just has to be equal on either side of however deep you want it to be. Next, we mark our super duper important little triangles off the edge here. Now, they don't have to be perfect, but they do have to go all the way to the point of the corners there. And they should be big enough that you can grab onto them easily, and you'll see why in a little bit. Now, I like to put just a little dot of fray check in each of these 4 corners, just as a little bit of insurance to make sure that I don't fray out while I'm working on it. Next, you want to let that dry before we cut it. Cutting this sucker, you want to be very, very careful to get this line to be absolutely straight, as well as cut all the way to, but not through, your corners here. You're cutting all the way through both layers. And make sure you leave your super duper important triangles and cut all the way to the corners, all the way, but not through. And you will see pretty quickly in the next step, if you have not cut this far enough, this will not want to turn all the way, just like that, and you'll end up with a sad little smushed corner. So to get it nice and crisp, you want it to be all the way there. Okay? And do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so now you have your welts cut out, woohoo, and you have this hole in between. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your hand, you're going to stick it through the hole that you just made. You're You're going to grab onto your pocketing on both sides of your welt and pull it through. Doo-doo-doo. Like so. You've pulled your lining all the way through, and we are now on the wrong side of this guy. So this is the outside of your garment here. You can press your little triangle corners down. Just right there, real carefully. Right? And right here. There we go. Alright. And what you're going to do is you're going to press this part, right, your welt, flat and down this way. Like so. Now, if you want your welt to sit more on the inside, you can do it here, but we're going to do it down for this demonstration. So, you've pressed this down. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull this side back up, taut to that edge. Right there. Okay? Just like so. And you're going to press it down. And you want this to be very accurate and very flat. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to flip this up. Press this bit up. Like so. Pull this taut. And this should be butting right here. Just like that. So now that you have this all nicely pressed from this side, you can flip it over and see how your welt is developing. Now, if you have any imperfections along this side, you can kind of pull them out now and press them out now to make your welt as pretty as possible. This next part you can do by hand if you want this to absolutely not show at all. But since this is a speed welt, we're going to do this the speedy way and just try and stitch in the stitch as best we can right along the bottom edge of our welt, and only the bottom edge of our welt. Now to have this show up less with the top stitching, what you can do is instead of back stitching at your start or stop, you can pull it out when you get to the end, flip it over, and pull your thread on the back side to pop your front thread to the back. Like that. Bonk. And then you can just tie that off, and from the front there's less of a fat edge. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the fashion fabric from the other end of our lovely pocket strip here. We're going to bring it all the way back up to the top here so that once again we can see, you know, we have some to catch in the waistband there. And we're going to carefully peel back this side, right? Just like so. And now you can see your very important triangle right here, right? I'm going to sew from the bottom right along that edge of that triangle right here, all the way up. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to peel this back. So all the way, oh, let's see, so all the way from the top through the very important little triangle, all the way to the bottom of your pocket. Now what you can do is either pink off or serge off the extra amount on either side here. Last step, we're going to be stitching the ditch right along this top edge here, same as on the bottom, but this time we're going to catch all of our layers so that we don't have an indefinite height to our pocket here. It'll just stop right above our welt here. And once again, you could do this all by hand to make it invisible, but we're doing this the speedy way, so we're just going to do it by machine. And there you have it. Welt pocket. Our speed welt. You can stick your whole hand in here. It's a functional pocket. And if you were going to put this into an actual garment at this point, you'd want to baste this shut so that you don't end up accidentally sewing it at an odd angle or catching the lining or whatever. But yeah, there you are. Welt pocket. Go forth and have lots of fun with your welts.